Welcome to Alumni Experts. My name is Ann Pistone, and I am a 1990 graduate of DePaul University, communications with a concentration in journalism, and that was as close as you could get to a journalism degree back then. Ever since, I have been a journalist since 1999. I have been at ABC 7 News. I'm an investigative producer, and I've done investigations in politics my whole career. Today I wanted to talk to you about increasing your chances of getting a job in journalism. So while you're in school, you want to make sure you have a broad education in journalism. Don't just focus on one thing. Journalism has changed quite a bit since I got out of school. No longer are television journalists only doing TV. For example, if you're working for a television station, you also rewrite your story to be posted on the web, and you write it in the AP style for a newspaper. If you work for a newspaper, you may be asked to do a video version of your story. A lot of news agencies are also starting up their own podcasts and their own live web, like town hall meetings or discussion groups among journalists. So there's a lot going on. You need to be diverse. The more you know, the farther you will go. It's important to think beyond your degree while you are in school. You really are not going to get in the door unless you have extracurriculars and internships. Every year I hire a few interns. It's a very coveted internship to be on the investigative team. And so our corporate offices send us the cream of the crop of the internship applications, and we just see maybe the top 6 or 8. And I can't remember the last time I saw one of those resumes that didn't include extracurricular activities and internships. It's a very competitive market out there, and you need both. And it's also good for you as a person. You will learn more, you will gain experience outside of the classroom, and it is very important. So the things I'm talking about are joining your school newspaper. If your school has a magazine or a radio station that has news inserts, maybe your university has its own television station. These are all things that you should be joining in on. I know that I wouldn't have gotten my television internships if I hadn't been one of the editors on my school newspaper. So my school newspaper got me into my television internship, which got me into my first job. So you see how that works. Internships are incredibly valuable to you as a person. It will help you decide what you want to do. Maybe you'll decide this isn't the career for you. Maybe you'll decide that you want to hone in on something more specific, like not just general news reporting, but a specific thing like politics or sports. And you'll get real world experience. You'll make contacts. You'll see how everything works. And when we're hiring interns, just like in the real world when you're hiring employees, you want to know that the person coming to you can hit the ground running, that training is only going to take so long, because you're hiring that person because you need help, and you want them to have all the skills necessary to be able to jump in and do the work. So as many internships as you can, and as many extracurriculars as you can, of course within reason. You want to do them well, not just the amount. And if you can work your way up, let's say you're on your school newspaper as a reporter and you become an editor, that's also very impressive. It shows that now you have some management skills and you know what it's like to manage a newsroom, which is extremely helpful and rather impressive. So remember to go beyond your degree. It's important to consider joining journalism organizations while you're in school and afterwards. They're a great way to meet people, to network, and to find out what's going on in the industry. They often hold panel discussions about the latest legal issues that journalists are facing. They will have continuing education like computer-assisted reporting classes. They also post jobs, and they sometimes have meetups with people who are looking for jobs and people who are looking to fill positions. Some of the journalism organizations, and there are many out there, are the Society of Professional Journalists, the National Association of Black Journalists, the Asian American Journalist Association, the National Association of Hispanic Journalists, and investigative reporters and editors. That's one that I've been involved with for decades now. But those are just a small portion of the many journalism organizations that are out there. They will often have a lower fee for people who are currently students. They know you're not pulling in money right now, and so they will lower their fee, or sometimes they will offer you a free membership if you help out at one of their panel discussions or annual holdings. Before you start your search for a position, do a lot of research. Think about exactly who you'd like to work for, what kind of journalist you would like to be. I found it incredibly helpful to hone in on a few journalists that I had watched or read over the years to see exactly how they did their craft. Nowadays, there are even podcasts where these journalists will talk about how they did their story, and you really get an inside look at how they work. And you can see for yourself how they put their stories together. It's really helpful in getting a better understanding of where you want to go, and eventually you'll develop your own style. Some people develop their own style a lot more quickly than others, but researching who you admire and why tells you a lot about the kind of journalist you'd like to be, and that's really helpful. It's also helpful when you go on interviews, because you might be interviewing for the exact news organization that you want to work for. And if you can let them know that you understand how they work and what their attitude is, are they a more relaxed, informal way of presenting news, or are they more old-fashioned, very specific in their way of presenting news? You'll also understand their newsroom and how it's built, how wide a range they go after. Are they only politics? Do they have politics and sports and technology? The more you know about the news organization that you want to work for, the better idea of where you're going and the better idea of who you are, and that helps you and the person who's hiring you. So don't look at it just as a consumer of news, but as researching your future. That was a big help to me. I had a couple journalists that I really admired, and I watched how their career changed and how they did things, and they were kind of my mentors without even knowing it. And now it's time to look for a job. It's very common in journalism to move away from home or the college that you've been staying at in order to find your first entry-level job. Most people move to smaller markets. In other words, New York, LA, and Chicago are the three largest news markets. And the smaller towns, the smaller they get, the smaller the market they are. You won't make a lot of money, but you'll get a ton of experience, because usually in these smaller markets, you'll do everything. One day you'll report, one day you'll anchor, one day you'll be the director, one day you'll run the assignment desk. My fellow friend journalists all have great stories about these years, how tough it was, but how fun it was, and that they made lifelong friends, and they learned a lot. I didn't go that way. I actually started out in Chicago, but I had small jobs, research and freelance, and I also made no money, and I was living in a city that was far more expensive than a smaller town. So it was very difficult. It's a different way to do it. It might even be a little bit riskier. So there are different ways to approach this. But be prepared to go to a smaller market for a year or two, and then work your way up to larger markets until you get to exactly where you'd like to be. Besides going to a smaller market, you may have to freelance, which is what I did. And freelancing is where you're hired for a day or maybe a week or maybe for a project. And you're paid usually a daily rate, a set rate, and there are no benefits. You usually don't make a whole lot of money, and you never really know when you're going to work next. I didn't care for it. It was extra stressful to not know when I'd be working next, even though I ended up working quite a bit. But in hindsight, it was great, but at the time it was pretty difficult. The good thing about freelancing, because it's really opened up over the years, is that it's a great way to get your foot in the door or to work part-time if you are still in school or going to get your master's. The bad side is that a lot of news organizations are struggling financially, and having a freelance staff is a lot cheaper than having full-time staff. So you do feel cheated after a while if you're really looking for a full-time job. So there's good and bad with both. I hope that these tips and ideas have been insightful for you, helpful in your journey into getting a job into journalism. The one thing I want to leave you with is the job that you are going to do is not only exciting, but it's extremely important. Telling people what's happening around them in their communities, in their country, in their world is an incredibly important thing. Digging up things that are wrong and exposing them, getting the truth out to the public. It's never been more important than right now. I'm thrilled that this is what you want to do, and you'll be very glad you did, because it's a very satisfying career. So thank you, good luck to you, and see you out on the trail.